When I first got my start making clown history videos on TikTok, I covered the different types of clowns before with a mobile app and a dream. But I realized that I can cover the topic again and even more depth, creating helpful guides for the various types of clowning here on YouTube. So sit back, relax, and put some tokens into the Bouncy arcade cabinet as we learn about the Whiteface clown. The first thing that you need to know is that the whiteface clown has two subtypes and one main origin. The two subtypes are the classic whiteface, otherwise known as the neat whiteface, and the comedic whiteface, sometimes known as the grotesque whiteface. And both of these styles of whiteface clown makeup share one origin: the European whiteface. Starting off at the origin, the European whiteface, it is the oldest of all of the clown types. Tracing back all the way to ancient Greece, where comedic actors painted their faces white so that they could be easily seen by the audience. In the Greek theater, they didn't use makeup to hide their face, but instead to enhance it. This was because their lighting was so poor, they relied on candlelight by night and the literal sun by day. A face of white makeup with black markings often illuminated the actor's facial features in these settings. The tradition of using white face makeup evolved during the 16th to 18th century Italian theater, known as commedia dell'arte, with stock characters like the Piero, who didn't wear a mask but instead opted for a classical white face appearance with small black details and red lips. More modern European whiteface clowns still use many of these makeup techniques. Their faces and necks are covered in white, and the lips are thinly covered in red. Black is used around the eyes to add definition, and lastly is the eyebrows. Modern European clowns began to add different types of eyebrow designs in their makeup, usually making one eyebrow much different than another and sort of add a curve. For instance, Bruno Stutz's design. The eyebrow placement of the European whiteface really does add to the story being told, like for instance, Jean-Marie Corolli's arrogant-style eyebrows. He purposely paints them above his natural eyebrow line to look more pompous and stuck up to the audience. One of the hallmarks of the European whiteface is that some have red ears. It's said they paint their ears red to show a little humanity in their look. The European whiteface clown is a neat and regal sort of clown, best identified by some as the type of clown doll you picture sitting on a shelf. They often wear bald caps and keep a slick hairstyle. They wear smaller, daintier shoes, which came from during the 16th century when clowns and harlequin wore tinier shoes, so they didn't obstruct the view of the other actors behind them on the stage. These shoes were also called sochi. As for clothing, in France there were even costume designers who specialized in clown clothing and created a variety of looks for the European whiteface. Designers like Gerard Vicaire and Robert Delannoy designed looks pictured here. In French circus lingo, these costumes were called sacs or bags, and they had a purpose. They were designed to help the clown stay agile during acrobatics and maintain elegance. These classic one-piece outfits we recognize everywhere today were said to have originated from the famous playwright Molière, who was casting a play and dressed his comedic character in a large smock. And this smock was actually found from a nearby peasant because he couldn't find a costume that suited his needs, so he literally asked a peasant if he could borrow their oversized smock so that he could use it for his clown character, and it ended up working out perfectly because the smock was so spacious for the character to do its different gags and acrobatics. However, these more simplistic looks evolved with time, and now the European whiteface is more avant-garde, the more popular style being a heavily bedazzled and jeweled look with very intricate patterns. The European whiteface clown is definitely recognized by its almost royal type of look. When you look at these costumes, you really think, wow, how long did that costume take to make? Now that you're more acquainted with the European whiteface, we can get into the two main subtypes. The first is the neat whiteface. This style of whiteface clown took inspiration from the European whiteface and evolved over time throughout the history of the theater and the circus to be a put-together and elegant clown. Mostly found on a stage, This clown is said to rarely be funny on their own and functions as the lawmaker and know-it-all of the other clowns. They're at the top of the pecking order in the theater. The classic Whiteface clown's makeup, much like its appearance, is like its namesake, neat. And it leans away from exaggeration and playfulness. These clowns don't usually have rosy cheeks, fun designs, or an array of bold colors. The palette is usually red, black, and white. And if it does include any types of designs or other colors than that, they are very thoughtfully and carefully placed to accentuate the face of the clown themselves. This rule also applies to the lips and nose. The neat Whiteface will not have heavy exaggerated makeup on the lips and will stay inside the lines of their natural size lips. Sometimes they will implement small circles on the side of the mouth, but not always. The nose for the classic Whiteface clown is also painted on a classic red. Contrary to popular belief, not all types of clowns benefit from or use a large nose. The clown nose itself is said to be created by Albert Fratellini, who was accentuating his nose to look more drunk and flushed and to be seen as such from afar, who, ironically enough, was one of the fathers of Auguste clowning, while his brother, Francois Fratellini, was a whiteface clown. As shown by Francois, the neat whiteface doesn't need to exaggerate this feature. Neat whiteface clowning is flexible in that some neat whitefaces do exaggerate some of their features and markings, but you'll notice there's a heavy contrast there between black and red. Sometimes other colors are used, but if they are used, everything is matching and very uniform. A common style of mouth makeup sometimes found in neat whitefaces is to exclude the top lip and only line the bottom lip outwards to look like a wider smile. But even then, you'll see the clown has also used lots of black and other identifying features in their makeup. When you look at a neat whiteface clown, you definitely notice that they are very put together. When it comes to the neat whiteface's hair, much like we see with European whiteface clowns, most neat whiteface clowns also wear a wig cap or bald cap and a simple pointed white hat. These clowns, much like in their makeup, don't rely on fun or bold colors. Sometimes they opt for their natural hair. For clowns with longer hairstyles, like for example a female neat whiteface clown might have, an orderly appearance is also acceptable instead of a bald cap. But the overall idea here is the hair is not a character-defining aspect of this clown. It's meant to be tidy and kept away from the face. The neat whiteface clown is also quite the fashionista. While a loose-fitting costume is a staple of most clowns, the difference when a neat whiteface clown wears them is that over time, it evolved to be decorated ornately. This falls into line with the idea that the classic whiteface clown is the rule maker, in charge and setting up the comedic scene. This clown is usually a bit posh, with the one-piece outfit showing extravagant details. However, some classic whiteface clowns do implement more simple costumes to help add to their dignified personas. Many whiteface clowns match their clothing to their makeup as to have a more neat and thought-out look. When you look at such a character, you know they aren't foolish, silly, or as free-spirited as the other clowns on the stage next to them. They are put together and wearing regal materials. It's a good example of a costume telling the audience about a character before the character themselves opens their mouth. Actually, the neat whiteface clowns' outfits were so opulent that back when circuses were mud shows, it was the job of the circus workers to roll out the carpet that these clowns stood on as to not damage their outfits in the literal mud. Interestingly enough, these circus workers, usually unshaven and tired from being worked so hard by the circus, would throw on makeup where they could and were called carpet clowns. They entertained the crowd as they changed scenes. This is actually one of the origins and part of the history of tramp and hobo clowns, but that's for a different episode. When it comes to neat whiteface clowning, there can be a lot of variety, and there isn't too many strict rules on what makes the character besides the role they're playing. But a good rule of thumb to identify them is their makeup is heavily contrasted with red and black, and their costume, even if it's not a one-piece suit or heavily bedazzled, matches and looks very uniform. If they do use other colors, these colors will match all the way throughout the look. There is an identifiable neatness to them. I guess that's why we call them the neat Whiteface. But knowing how regal these Whiteface clowns were, this is why they were placed in juxtaposition with a more zany, fun, or silly clown, like an Auguste. You can see that when they all stand together, the Whiteface clown is giving orders and the other clowns are taking them. It's sort of like how you would feel if you saw someone's boss in a suit talking to just two of their employees. You'd be like, I know who's basically running and calling all the shots here. Although most Whiteface clowns may not be the ones doing all the outright funny and hilarious physical comedy, they are an important and integral building block of the comedy scene. There is still comedy in being the person who sets up the joke and remains stoic and dignified while doing so. And just as a fun little tidbit, usually when people think of circus clowns, a lot of times they are actually thinking of the classic Whiteface clown, and the reason why is because they were used in a lot of classic and vintage Ringling ads. The second type of Whiteface clown is the comedy or grotesque Whiteface clown. The comedic Whiteface is not worried about its connections to Commedia dell'arte, nor looking like a fashionable boss. A comedic Whiteface experiments with exaggerated makeup, noses, face paint, large shoes, and hair. They're basically the type of clown you think of when you think about a birthday clown or a clown mascot. And because this type of clown is an evolution of a more serious theater subtype, you can find this everywhere. No, really, everywhere. Like, the media loves comedic Whiteface clowns. Ronald McDonald is a Whiteface clown, and even Bozo himself is a Whiteface clown. Even Krusty the Clown and Pennywise technically counts style-wise as comedic Whiteface clowns. The easiest way to identify that you are looking at a comedic Whiteface clown is to just look for a full white base and wacky colored hair. Most also use big red noses. They use latex noses or even a string nose to accentuate the nose. And most colors are not going to be shied away from, even on the face. As for the outfit, it is usually a baggy clown suit, but the fun is, it doesn't have to be. It can be whatever the clown would like it to be. This is the fun-loving, rule-abaning, sky-is-the-limit type of style of clowning. And if you're looking to find the difference between the neat Whiteface clown and the comedic Whiteface clown in the theater in a stage setting, it can also be easily identified based on the fact that the comedic clown will always be the one that engages in more slapstick and physical comedy. Both are usually the ones that set up the joke, but that really is the main takeaway. The comedic Whiteface will definitely be going out of their way to make you laugh physically, while the neat Whiteface is more regal. Think about back when I told you about carpet clowns. These clowns aren't getting dirty, they're not getting nitty-gritty, they're not going out of their way to make you laugh. They're very regal. I myself am a comedy Whiteface clown. I do take inspiration from neat Whiteface clowning makeup in that I actually usually paint my own nose and I keep my lips less exaggerated. However, I use quite a zany color palette and crazy hair, and I do have exaggerated props and puppets. Although we talked about how there are a lot of comedic Whitefaces that you do know, a good example of a comedic Whiteface that might surprise you is the father of modern-day clowning, Joseph Grimaldi. Joseph, who is the catalyst for clowning as we know it, and where we get the nickname Joey for a clown, mixed the regalness of the European Whiteface clowning with his own humor and used exaggerations of it. For instance, he had blue tufts of hair coming from out of his bald cap, and he was known to engage in prop comedy where he would create inventions on stage and engage in slapstick gags. Well, that about wraps it up for types of Whiteface clowns. I hope this guide on Whiteface clowning has helped you to identify this type of clown and its different subtypes. Whether you need this guide for your own clowning or writing and research, or if you just wanted to learn something fun today, please stay tuned for more. And subscribe if you haven't to see the rest of this series and learn about even more types of clowns in a greater depth than most people are willing to go. Wait! Before you go, if you'd like to test out what you've learned, let's play a game. Which picture shows an example of a European Whiteface clown? You can tell this clown is a European Whiteface clown based on the style of the outfit, the curved eyebrows, and the red ears. A dead giveaway.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Which picture shows an example of a neat white-faced clown? You can tell you're looking at a neat white-faced clown based on the clown's heavily contrasted makeup, bald cap, hat, and matching outfit.
That's what I expected.
Which picture shows an example of a grotesque or comedic white-faced clown? You can tell that this is an example of a comedic whiteface based on their colorful hair, large red nose, and fun colors of their outfit and makeup.
Well, I got the picture.
Thanks for playing with me, everyone. I hope I see you back again soon. Bye-bye!